Welcome into Pro Football Ireland Week 16 podcast. Voice of Mark Hogan. Michael, a last minute dropout. So catch him later in the week. I am joined, as always, with Jason Hayes. Jason, this is the second week in a row that I'll be starting the podcast chewing. Last week, I think I was chewing on a biscuit because I was out. Right now, I got whatever Michael had last week. Have you got the dreaded dose that's going around at the moment?
I am not dosed up. No, I've avoided it. Family members dropping all around me like flies, but no, I've somehow avoided it to this point. So here's hoping I can stay away. It's going to strike me now right before Christmas. It always does.
Yeah, you know, I was glad to get it, Jason. I was glad to get it. I said I'd rather take it this week than in a week's time when you're tucking into something nice, a treat that you've been waiting to have for a while. Yeah, like you say, silly season is in full effect. How's it been treating you so far?
Very good, yeah. I mean, too good. We're halfway through December now, and I just feel like a barrel already. I just, just a couple of those nights and indulgent meals where it's just like I need to sort my life out. But 2 more weeks of it, fully in the festive spirit. I can see you're in the festive spirit as well. Beautiful.
Oh, good pull.
Christmas jumper.
I have the Cardinals Christmas jumper because gorgeous. when the cat's away and all that. And when else I would have saved it for next week when I'll be on with, I think it's Dara and Michael. But I said there's no better opportunity than when it's the two fellas, the two Cardinals fans. It's so funny, Jason, because I was like, is it too early to wear? And I was like, there is only 5 days a year in my head that I probably get away with wearing this. It probably cost my partner who got it for me for Christmas too much money, maybe 2 years ago, and I have not gotten the wear from it. So when Michael said he wasn't coming on the podcast tonight, I said that is the absolute best opportunity to get it done. No, I'm here. Do you know the other place I usually wear it is maybe going to a pub over Christmas? Are you a 12 pubs man, or where's the best place in Cork to do your 12 pubs?
Funny you should ask. Yeah, we're just planning that. We're planning a new route this year. Normally, for those of you who know Cork, which I'm sure we have a loyal Cork listenership, we'd head down Barrack Street, but it's been too chaotic for us these days. You know, we're entering our 30s now, and the college students kind of live in that area. So we're actually going to venture up the north side. And I have a friend with just too much time on his hands who has it all mapped out, the most efficient route. Cut up this street, loop around here. You can hit 3 pubs every day. So we're going to try the 12 pubs away from the chaos as much as we can. But looking forward to it. Sunday will be rough, I think.
I ended up on a de facto 12 pubs Saturday the week before last. I'm trying not to drink at the moment, but I did because my partner's sister was over, and de facto was that we went into one, had great crack there, and just kept on rolling. It's like, city season just takes over at a certain point. I think we ended up in 8 pubs. Again, not even planned out. We just kept on going for one pub and move on. I love doing that this time of year. This broadcast brought to you by SBK. Sports betting only, no casino or games. I find it great. 18 plus. If you're gambling, please do so responsibly. Jason, we are going to first look at the Steelers-Lions game, and then a kind of a nice festive naughty or nice section that'll make sense when we come to it. Wrap back around in part 2 with the Panthers and Bucks games. Then we'll do some quick hit games as well, because the slate is absolutely stacked. But something I do want to touch on this week, because we left it so late, it was the last minute, I think, of the podcast last week before we mentioned the name Charlie Smith, and obviously he's coming off such a magnificent week. Yeah, talk about it, Jason. What a week for Charlie Smith.
Oh my God, dream scenario. His third game starting, to even be gifted that situation is incredible. And listen to him speak about it all week. It really was a situation where he was hoping for that. He predicted it would happen halfway through the fourth quarter. He felt it was going to come down to that kick. He was mentally ready for it. He wanted it. Didn't shrink away. A lot of people in that moment, with all the hard work he's gone through to be in that position so early in his career, a lot of people will crumble and just say, no, I don't want to face that right now. I want to just keep doing what I'm doing, and ease into it. But no, he relishes that opportunity, and my God, he thrived. He's so cool, standing there, getting ready for the kick. I mean, to even have the aura to stand and face the the Panthers sideline after it successfully sailed through the uprights. I'm not sure how much of that was conscious, or if by the sounds of it, he kind of just, his instincts took over. I'm sure he's done that on the GA pitch a few times in the past, but it's amazing, Mark. Yeah, it's just, I'm not surprised to see him thriving, but it's just so fun. And it's so fun to see even the American media and the American fans getting behind him, because it's just such a cool story, obviously.
American media, American fans, American teammates. That was what, like, that video, I suppose we had the video in week 1 of him playing up in Mayo Bridge, but this week's video that certainly went viral was the reaction to the players chanting his name in the locker room. Absolutely insane. Like, when you're dreaming of those moments, it's probably like a third eye view, or whatever you call it, a bird's eye view of yourself kicking the point. And it's the reaction afterwards that, I'm thinking of winning All Ireland's when he used to be up at Selby GA Club. I'd be hitting the hurl or the sliotar off the ball wall, thinking like, oh, that's the point going over, and turning around and seeing all the admiration around you or whatever. That admiration happened in real life. And it's like when you see Chris Olave, did not know Chris Olave and Charlie was such great friends until Chris Olave's press conference afterwards, when he said that that's my boy or whatever. And I was like, the way Chris Olave goes over, like, dabs Charlie up, where I was like, geez, like, Charlie hangs around with Chris Olave, who's absolutely a household name if you follow the NFL. Absolutely insane. Talk about dreams come true, and it's only the beginning for him. Something I did want to clean up, because I heard on Irish radio and I thought it was a bit confusing. I suppose if you're listening to this podcast, maybe you don't need it to be explained, but certainly that contract that we hope that Charlie will now sign, because he has been elevated 3 times, and the rules obviously stipulate in the NFL only 3 times can you be elevated from the practice squad before you have to be on the active roster. I don't think that we're, Jason, going to see any difference. And like, we won't see any difference as fans if Charlie signs this contract. We saw Jude, the same thing happened to him earlier on in the year, that when he signed the contract, it doesn't mean any extra loyalty. You can be cut as a kicker after any poor game. Again, this Irish radio that I was listening to made the mistake of thinking that suddenly now Charlie's pay would increase. Why do we care about another person's pay? Is something that you could argue. But as soon as you play in the game, you're getting paid for being on the practice squad. But as soon as you get elevated, you have to get the league minimum for playing in the game. So the jump has already happened, and we won't necessarily know if they're just going to keep him on that minimum game payment if he were to sign. I think for himself personally, I think the difference is really that it starts to accumulate into kind of NFLPA kind of stuff that I think maybe like we all heard about Philip Rivers's insurance plan this week, that it's, if you've missed it, by coming back to the NFL, he gets another 5 years of insurance for his medical insurance for his family. I think the likes of that stuff is what is important to players that are on the bubble, like Charlie right now, that he's going from practice squad to active roster. But I actually had a few people text, even my sister text, asking about him getting a contract. I really don't think it's going to make a whole lot of difference to us right now. We're still going game to game with this whole thing. And it's fun to get it through the end of the season. So hopefully, I don't know if there's anything that you can add that might highlight anything different, but I think people are overthinking it.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL is a ruthless league. These contracts, just today, the news that Tua has been benched and he's probably going to be moving on from the Dolphins. I mean, a 5-year contract, a 1-year contract, the teams can cut it at the drop of a hat. And if there's any position that suffers most from that, it's probably the kicker position. But I think it's still, even symbolically, I think it means something. The fact that he's had this 3-game trial, he's embraced it, he's proven himself, and hopefully in the form of a full contract, that's rewarded. So I do think it means something. But yeah, I don't get the whole fascination with the monetary side of it. I mean, who cares? Just root for the guy.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny because we all know in Irish households, you don't talk about what money you're on. And all of a sudden people are like, well, I would like to know what he is. He must be a millionaire by now and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was funny. My sister being like, is he on the active roster? And I was like, Elaine, explain to me what an active roster is and I'll talk to you about it. We're getting some comments through there. Keep them coming in. I will get around to them. I see one from Paddy and from Justin. Justin, we're going to be looking at your Detroit Lions in a second. I'm always worried we have passionate people and Alistair too. I just threw up Alistair's comment there kind of just describing, Jason, I'll read it out if you're listening to us now, talking about Charlie's moment, the Bills, Broncos, the Tampa Bay meltdown, Mahomes and Micah Parsons injuries, hard to keep up, absolutely. Now we hear that Tua is being benched. Might as well deal with that right now. A Miami reset. I've never been a believer in Tua Tagovailoa. And not never, but it's like there was clear like issues there for a number of years. Going with Quentin Ewers, I presume I've only read the name up until this point. We're going to hear a bit more about him. I just think it's the right decision to go to him over Zach Wilson when you're, your season is over now and you've drafted this guy who was really good. I think Texas in college. You're just trying to get a look at him, right?
Yeah, I mean it's only 3 games, so 3 games left in the season. I think they have. I guess all teams have at this point. Yeah, I think it's the right move. You say you weren't a big believer in him. I wasn't really a big believer in Tua either. Mike McDaniel certainly seemed like a big believer, and I think that belief got some of the productive years we saw out of him. But it's funny that this must be Tua's most healthy year of his career. And it's just the year where everything's gone wrong, because the only thing that's gotten in the way of some successful seasons in the past has been his health. He's had that this year, but that team as a whole is a bit of a mess. I think Tua can be serviceable. I think we've seen his ceiling. I think he's reached the ceiling. And that ceiling, I think, in the right environment and the right team is enough to get a team into the playoffs and maybe go all the way. But I don't think he's going to be the reason that a team is going to succeed. We're seeing a lot of that type of quarterback in the league these days, where it's more a guy that the offensive genius coach can work with, and it won't hold them back, more so than a guy that we can just throw out there to the wolves and he's going to win us football games.
And he had one of those, insane-minded head coaches with McDaniel. So I suppose he's had his opportunity in the cool offense, and it's like it hit its peak and then it came back to. I think it's an interesting offseason ahead, just because obviously there was for years there the concussions, the seasons there so recent, and I think will they have a conversation? Oh, you're not with the Dolphins. We've just seen Philip Rivers come back into the NFL because there's a lack of backups that head coaches trust, but maybe they'll trust Tua or Tua. I don't know if they will or not. But I wonder will he end up retiring anyway, because he'll be told enough times, you know what, maybe now is the time to just reflect on those concussions. Who knows? He's obviously said to this point, no, he doesn't care. He wants to keep playing. Joe Burrow so recently just said, look, I'm paid to play football. That is the mindset to get into the NFL, no doubt. But yeah, it's something to come. We will wrap back around to some of those question that you got in. Again, I said one was from Justin, who I know is Ireland's probably biggest Lions fan. He certainly is in my eyes. Steelers at Lions is a big game this week, Jason. We really had, if you look down the bottom of the graphic, if you're actually reading out, or watching along, there is an insane slate of games with so much on the line. And that's why it's kind of crazy. This Steelers game is obviously the Steelers number 4, but the Lions there are really fun. I think if they lose this game, their chances to get into the playoffs go into single digits. If you look at the Athletics football or the Athletics playoff simulator, which it's insane when we were saying coming into the year that they were the favorites to come out of the NFC potentially. Is there something that you want to start on?
Yeah, I think it's kind of frustrating watching the Lions because they clearly have a talented roster, and each unit, whether it's offensively or defensively, their ceiling is high. Like they've put in some fantastic performances this year, but it just has been a bit up and down. Looking at the defense, firstly, I say they've put some big performances in sporadically. Some massive wins throughout the season where they've limited decent offenses in opposition to 10, 15 points. But when they've needed to win games recently, and November, December football, when it's really mattered most, that defense has had a bit of a disastrous run. 27 points to the Giants, 31 points to the Packers, 30 to the Cowboys, which they managed to win. And the most recent loss to the Rams last weekend, they gave up 41 points, thanks to a bit of a collapse in the second half. there are just certain elements of that defense that aren't gelling. And we mention it week in, week out. I think every time we talk about the Lions, injuries are part of it. That's like undeniable. That backfield in particular has suffered quite a few injuries. But if they want to have any chance of making the playoffs, they just need to find a way to overcome it. Like in the backfield just last week, Amik Robertson, he's been kind of struggling all year. He was really picked on last week, and he's been picked on the last few weeks. DJ Reed, he was their big acquisition at cornerback in the offseason, and he did go down to injury midway through this season. But even since he's been back for the last 4 weeks, he just hasn't looked right. And, albeit they were playing an elite receiving core last week, but they did just look like they were, at 6s and 7s at times in the backfield there, trying to keep track of some of those Rams receivers. The one area on that defense that I think can win them games, or at least give the offense the opportunity to win a game when it's firing, is a pass rush. But that's been inconsistent. Aiden Hutchinson, he's been a bright spark these last couple of weeks. He was going through a bit of a slump himself for a few weeks before that, but these last 2 weeks, he has stepped up and proven to be the leader that we know he is. Against the Cowboys, for example, 2 weeks ago, the team had 5 sacks and they were all over Dak Prescott. We know it's in there for that defensive line, but it's just seeing it more consistently because they have troubles at the back end that I don't think they're going to be able to overcome. So the only way the defense can step up and make an impact in these games is to just get to the opposing quarterback. Mohammed along the D-line, he had 3 sacks a couple of weeks ago as well for the Cowboys. So Hutchinson, you need your stars to be firing, and he's shown good signs lately, but he just needs those guys around him to make an impact also, and get to that opposing quarterback, because it's just too easy at times when the defensive backs are miscommunications or just flat out being beaten the way that they are. They do need help from that D-line and pressuring the quarterback to make up for it. Before I talk about how I think they'll approach this week, maybe you want to talk a bit about the Steelers, Mark?
I do, and if you saw me texting frantically, shout out to Michael, who actually is able to jump on the Twitter there for me, because he does those things only when we're on the stream anyway. But I actually didn't know how we get a copy to the live video, the stream, to tweet out on Twitter. So shout out to Michael if you see some activity on the Pro Football Ireland. I know that we are. I see some comments coming through on Twitter or whatever. No, so when you're looking at the Steelers, I'm kind of starting by looking a bit too far into the future. I suppose a hard-nosed run game is an issue for this Steelers defense. Right now, the number 4 versus number 5 game in the FC would be the Steelers versus the Chargers. That's great news for the Steelers. Don't think the Chargers will be able to run over them. Mike Tomlin gets gets that postseason win, and the life cycle of him and the Steelers continue as he secures a future with the team. If the Bills, who are the 6th seed, move into that number 5 seed, it is a horrendous matchup because they're able to run all over the Steelers. And I kind of look at this Lions game as potentially a preview for what that Bills game would look like. A really strong run team that is able to absolutely dominate you. You have obviously Jamar Gibbs and Dave Montgomery there. 21 rushing touchdowns combined is absolutely brutal, and I think is going to have a massive say in this game. And bringing it forward to the other, has any fear been struck in to the Lions? Maybe they're just worried about their own playoff future, I suppose, because of the fact that they really are teetering on the edge of losing all capability to get into January. But Aaron Rodgers obviously coming off that performance against Miami last week that Alistair was kind of shouting out, I think, there a second ago. But it was against a really poor Miami Dolphins side that is now benched the quarterback as a result. But I suppose what I think comes with that game was Kenny G has another big game. Like we've talked about, he's flashed obviously in Dublin. It was just insane. We thought he was on the scene. But Kenny Gainwell, the running back, that is, if you weren't familiar with his nickname by now, if you missed the Dublin game, he obviously flashes, but I hope the Steelers are now turning the tide. Obviously, we've been talking about Darnell Washington and the tight end that's just so big he's able to do it all. But coming forward now, Marquez Valdez-Scantling got his first touchdown as a Steeler. Adam Thielen obviously was brought in when he was released and picked up on waivers, and his willingness to block, I suppose, has also helped out the run game. And after, I suppose, relying on Roman Wilson, or certainly in the offseason, thinking that Roman Wilson was going to have a massive jump forward in year two, even on the defense, Darius Slay, there was expectations on him. Ultimately, he got released just before the trade deadline, I think it was. I hope they're into a new phase of figuring it out, but I hope it can finally be figured out on the offense now. It was against an easier Miami Dolphins defense and team as a whole, so I don't know what you can really take from it. But I suppose I woke up to a text from my brother after the game the other day, and he said, "Oh, thank God, I'm absolutely buzzing after they beat the Dolphins," because I was like, after beating the Ravens, I thought they're going to lose their destiny against like an absolute banana peel that is the Miami Dolphins. He kind of reflects when I'm thinking of the Steelers. Are they starting to feel themselves just a little bit because Aaron Rodgers was so good last week? His passer rating was through the roof, 2 touchdowns, didn't turn the ball over. Maybe slightly pushing the ball down the field a little bit more. They certainly had one of their biggest plays of the year. There's a little bit of excitement there. I think, though, does it come crashing down when you meet the Detroit Lions this weekend?
Rodgers has made the playoffs since 2021. It's definitely not a streak he would have been expecting. So I think you can just sense the excitement from him in all these post-game interviews. He looks like he has that youthful energy again. Hey, Michael, I can see Michael's comment there. I think, we know what the Steelers' offense is. You mentioned it had a couple more deep shots last week, but ultimately it was still the same recipe of get the ball out of Rodgers' hands as quick as possible. So short, quick passing. I think there is opportunity for the Steelers with this Detroit secondary to maybe have a couple of those deep plays if they can get anything going there. Question for me will be, will he have time? Because that Steelers offensive line has been questionable. This Lions defensive line, hot and cold. But if Hutchinson and the likes of Muhammad can, make some plays, then it could be a tough day for Rodgers. And sometimes looking at these matchups, we talk about strength versus strength, but I think it's very much weakness versus weakness when we look at the Steelers' run game against the Lions' run defense, which has left a lot to be desired these last few weeks. Opposition running backs, it's been too easy for them. A few missed tackles, but quite significant holes along that defensive line. So can the Steelers exploit that? Their run game has its issues. I think ultimately from a Lions perspective, the recipe is simple. Get to Rodgers as fast as you can and take away some of those quick checkdowns that he's had success with so much, including Kenny G, who you mentioned. So can they shut down those first, second options and get to Rodgers? It'll be an interesting game on both sides of the ball. I think it's because these teams, you almost don't know which one is going to show up for both these units on both sides.
Yeah, and it's what I checked on SBK last night, and it was a 6-point advantage they give to the Detroit Lions. So, I mean, I think that's about fair, to be honest. But that's the thing, that the Steelers are one of the biggest wild cards this year. We're going to look ahead now because there was so many games. Again, if you're able to read the graphic on the bottom of the screen, you're able to go. Like, I mean, not to timestamp it, but the Rams Seahawks, the first ever meeting of 2 11+ wins on Thursday Night Football, just speaks to the volume of the games that we have. Patty Shank is asking, what shock will we see this weekend? I don't have one off the top of my hand, but it almost goes into what Justin was after saying. Mark is used to reporting on breakdowns. Justin is a Today FM listener. Can we have your views of the Chiefs and the Ravens on this season? Just coming off the back of that Steelers game, it's like, I just don't have any faith whatsoever in the Ravens. And it's funny, when we're planning out our podcast week to week, there's always a little element of looking forward to be like, okay, we don't want to over focus on certain teams. So it's like, not if we're able to avoid them, but sometimes they're able to avoid, and a lot of podcasts would have stayed away from talking about the Chiefs because it's going to become so Chiefs heavy down the stretch. It's just absolutely outrageous that we probably, I don't know, do we talk Chiefs for the rest of the year? A few weeks back, we thought that we'd wrap back around to the Chiefs-Broncos games. We didn't, when those teams first met up, talk about Chiefs-Broncos. We don't look at that game now because it's not for the division. Like, I kept on. It was probably my fault because I was too late giving up hope in the Steelers, but I learned that the hard way. Do you have off the top of your hand or top of your head any shocks? We do have Old Man Rivers at our losses as well. Does Old Man Rivers get a win, Jason?
Does Old Man Rivers? No, that would be a shock. Rivers did pretty well last year. I mean, he did about as well as you could expect. I kind of enjoyed that. I thought people were overly harsh on him. Like, they were away in Seattle. That was a tough contest to begin with. I think he did a better job than most guys would do, having stepped into that locker room on a Wednesday or whenever it was. So it's a solid performance from Rivers. Going back to the Chiefs comment, though, I think our next segment is the naughty and nice. Mark, is that correct? Do you want to intro that? And I might talk about the Chiefs then once you go.
Great shout after me starting the podcast late because I was making some graphics. I better actually throw some of these onto the screen if I'm able to get this one right. I know Micah Parsons is on it. Hitting some other games. No, that is the wrong one. abort. We need to get back onto it. I'll find it in a second. But yeah, it is that time of year. We did something last year where we gave a gift to everyone, but this week we said, why don't we keep it on theme? Wear our Christmas jumpers and do the naughty or nice list, and kind of, I suppose, who is earning their Christmas bonus is what I was thinking when I originally kind of came up with the concept, just in terms of it doesn't have to be good. It can also be bad. And as I pull up this finally, Jason, as I continue to stall, who is on your naughty or your nice list?
Yeah, so we'll use this as a chance to kind of sign off on the Chiefs for this season, because it has been just a bit of a mess of a season for them. And the name, maybe this is harsh, but I'm just going to summarize it in one name and put one name on the naughty list instead of a 53-man roster. I'm going to put Andy Reid on the naughty list, Mark, for the season. And I'm not in any way saying he's not one of the best coaches of all time. I think he's still a brilliant coach. And some of the things I'm going to say are harsh because there are so many problems from top to bottom, and I don't think the coach should always be blamed for some of the mistakes that his players are making, which they are in terms of penalties and drop passes and stuff like that. There's a lot that the players haven't done to back him up, but ultimately, look, the buck has to stop somewhere. It's the Chiefs' first time missing out on the playoffs since 2014, and while I think speak for many people to say that they're happy that they're gone and that we will be looking at some fresh teams, I am just very surprised that this is the year where everything is ground to a halt. We've seen some of the injuries that have gone on all the way around the league, but the Chiefs, so even just focusing on their offense, couple of things on the offensive line perhaps, but they've had their main guys for the majority of the season. That offense has been in pretty full health. Pacheco has missed some games, but mostly available and almost entirely available these last few weeks as they have gone on this losing streak. Marquise Brown, wide receiver they brought in to help out last year, he had 10 catches in the first week and hasn't had more than 4 catches in any game since then. Just hasn't really found his feet with the team. Xavier Worthy, first round pick, he's been there all year. They're still between Reid and Nagy. They're just struggling to carve out a role for him. He's doing a lot of these intermediate crossing routes that he's just such a slender frame, and it just doesn't seem to be working, whatever way they're trying to get him involved in the game. And then you even have Rashee Rice. You couldn't have dreamt of a better time for him to step back onto this team after 7 or 8 weeks when the Chiefs had turned things around. I think they were 4-3 or 5-3 at the time, and it looked like they'd stabilized. Defense was looking good. Offense was, we were talking about Patrick Mahomes being a potential MVP at that point. As hard as that is to believe when you consider these last few weeks. So it really was like they were in a good position to to make a run into the playoffs. And to see it derail the way it has, despite having those key pieces in place, I think is a bad reflection on the coaching and being able to get the most out of these guys, because it shouldn't look as hard as it looks week in, week out, where Mahomes is seemingly running for his life. Quite literally, he has a career high in rush yards this year, but it never looks easy on offense for the Chiefs. The run game is still non-existent. They've had a couple of years now to try and fix that, and I think it just needs an overhaul, because the way Andy Reid and Matt Nagy call that offense, it's just the run game is used as a necessity to just not pass all the time. It's never used as a way to actually hurt the opposition team. These RPOs and shotgun runs, it just hasn't been good enough, and it's put too much of the onus back on Patrick Mahomes. Just talked a while ago about how like some Mike McDaniel can work with a guy like Tua when implemented a scheme, and he can kind of facilitate a guy like Tua. With Mahomes, it just seems like it's all on him right now, and it's just a shame to look at the offense the way it is, because when you have a Mahomes, it shouldn't be a dink and dunk offense. They haven't reached their potential in 3 years now, since the Tyreek Hill trade. Yeah, they've won Super Bowls since then, so it sounds funny to say, but the Mahomes we saw for the first 7 years of his career, we haven't seen him these last few years. And I really thought the likes of Andy Reid would have figured it out by now. But his West Coast offense, I don't want to just sound like I'm shouting out hot takes now all of a sudden, but maybe it hasn't grown enough with some of the success we're seeing other offenses have. They're evolving. The league is evolving. But that Chiefs offense looks stagnated. And if there's one area, or one positive maybe from the fact that they're out of the playoffs so soon, is the fact that they can maybe rethink things now and retool things. Reid, Veach, they've been tweaking this roster for the last few years now, and winning close games probably covered up a few of these cracks last year. But I think it is time to make some more significant changes on this roster. And if I could just make one more point on why Reid himself is on the list. He's been compared to Bill Belichick a lot these last few years. You're talking about two of the winningest coaches of all time in the league. One thing Bill Belichick was a master at for sustaining these dynasties is moving on from players at the right time. He's always said, I'd rather move on a year too soon than a year too late. And he is famously ruthless with some of the guys he moved on from, including Tom Brady. It doesn't get more ruthless than that. And I think maybe there's been maybe Reid has been overly loyal to certain guys on the team. Should the amount of money that Kelsey's making be dedicated to him at this stage of his career? He's single-handedly cost them a couple of games with some of the drops and the kind of some of the signs of decline that he's shown this year. Reid, he has loyalty to his players, but he also has loyalty to his coaches. Has Matt Nagy done enough to still warrant a position as of leading that offense? I don't know. Loyalty is a good thing in the league, but you shouldn't shackle your team with it.
But it's also not being able to move on, Jason. Like, that's where we have to, and sometimes we do give passes to not only Andy Reid, but other guys to say, okay, like, they're in the position, there's only 32 of them in the world. Sometimes you got to trust them. But when Travis Kelce was mulling retirement, did they have a serious conversation? I mean, obviously, in the South at the moment, the Republic, I mean, we're talking about Michal Martin in the presidential election, and did they actually do their due diligence on Jim Gavin? It's like, did they do their due diligence on Travis Kelce? One positive as well, you're talking about positives, I do think that having the draft pick, when you're talking about you're always picking 31 or 32 the last few years, that allows them now to obviously get the draft picks, and in the other rounds there'll be mid-round picks as well, which is going to be nice for them. But something that really got me was Chris Jones didn't even know that they were eliminated from playoff contention. should, like, Andy Reid was talking about, like, we're playing for our playoff lives, you're going to see something from us. It clearly didn't get back to the locker room, like, light a fire under them. So I definitely level that against him when, going into the Super Bowls the last 3 times we've been talking about, like, his legacy is going to be massive. It kind of feels a bit like what's after happening, or what happened in the end of Philadelphia as well. Like, they didn't want him there anymore, and he goes and he obviously has the second career with the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's amazing. But I put it at Andy Reid's feet as well. If I keep going forward and kind of bring that point to Chris Jones forward, you're talking about guys that didn't play with a fire under them. Talk about a guy that has, like, I have to say, Myles Garrett going for the sack record here over the next few weeks is obviously huge for a team, and on a team that has been going nowhere. To keep that passion up and keep the guys surrounding him involved then too has been massive when the offense has been able to do absolutely nothing. Is it kind of he's playing with house money mentality, not playing with a record on his mind? I don't know, but he has been phenomenal. One sack off tying the record. I was looking forward to, I suppose, the naughty or nice list, and to keep the pun rolling, who's earning that Christmas bonus. He certainly can over the next few weeks as he goes after it. Josh Allen has given up the 6 most sacks, so that's who they play this weekend. The opportunity is there if he obviously runs the ball sometimes or holds onto it. Luckily, this game isn't in Buffalo, because there would be snow up there, Jason, and you know how that affects the pass rush. The week after that, though, there could be snow. They're playing Aaron Rodgers with that shallower defense. It is harder sometimes to get to Aaron Rodgers. Imagine that was a problem. And then Joe Burrow. I was kind of thinking of Joe Burrow in the same way that we think of Brett Favre with Michael Strahan. He gifted him the record when he slid down. Should it be revised in NFL history as a quarterback giving himself up instead of taking the sack? Imagine Joe Burrow refused to take a sack from Myles Garrett. Instead, he just slides anytime he sees him coming and doesn't give it away to a division rival. But I suppose part of this point for me, though, is probably a bit of a rant in terms of the glass half empty side of my life that I like to lean into. And I just still can't shake that we deal with these things in a 17-game season instead of a 16-game season. And I understand that, you beat the record, but if we rephrase, so TJ Watt ties Michael Strahan's record, but if we rephrase, instead of saying the sacks, and say, what about the most dominant pass rush season in NFL history? And then you base it purely off the averages. Okay, we say they've played a full slate of games. You must play a full slate of games to qualify for this stat. Then it's Michael Strahan was 1.4 sacks per game, whereas TJ Watt was 1.3 sacks per game. When we have the most advanced stats going at the moment for all kinds of everything, should we not be calling like this the postmodern Super Bowl era because we are in a 17-game season? For me, it just doesn't stack up. I'm so conscious this time of year. I really just want to end it in week 17 if you have your sack number by then, or certainly by game 16. There's just something that doesn't sit right with me, Jason. Am I harsh to say that?
I think society moves on ultimately, and in 20 years, people will look at these 17-game records as the records that they are. And it's like, I wouldn't want to be a record-breaking striker in the English League the year before the Premier League was brought in, because seemingly every stat starts now in 1992. So I think it's just something that we are in the moment now, where the games have expanded, and maybe they'll expand again over these next few years. They probably will. But ultimately, in a few years, nobody's going to care, Mark. So just leave it go.
That's the problem, though. It's like when you're looking at like winningest head coach of all time and this kind of stuff, it's like I feel like it writes your Vince Lombardi's that get their name on the trophy, they're remembered as being class, but anyone else that doesn't have a record to their name ultimately
let me flip it the other way. So that's a cumulative stat that you're building up these numbers over time. Dolphins, is that season tarnished, a 14-0 record? Because they haven't proven it 16-0, which is better. The Patriots who lost the Super Bowl, or the Dolphins who didn't play as many games. So you kind of flip it the other way as well.
Yeah, I suppose it's the whole, when you see the winningest head coach percentage and it's based off different amounts, like Nick Sirianni's up there right now, but it's like, when he's so young, he's going to have to go to a different team and probably stack up a few losses when they ultimately go there. I get your point. I actually specifically was thinking about the undefeated season. It was easier to do once upon a time. So yeah, you get caught both ways, but I suppose I kind of am like that. I know there's stats that everything says. Matt says that if you've more games to do something, you're going to get it done. So why are we losing our minds? Like I think for me, it's if you do the record in the same number of games, then it's impressive. But if we have a 30 game season and you're hitting 21 and a half sacks, like it's all cumulative, like you say. We're going to move into part 2 of this podcast. I think we're going to come back with I mean, if you're listening live, you can come back, or if you're listening on your podcast app, I actually don't know what the difference is, but catch you on the other side. Jason, I'm not going to do what Michael does, and for some reason, Michael, he will be listening to this as he puts this up online, puts down 3, 2, 1, because it doesn't really matter if you're listening live. Thanks for sticking with us and not catching you.
2-1 down. My God, they were 1-0 up at halftime.
Because it's the live stream, we can all take a breath and check who's doing well in the darts, check who's doing well in the football before we have to edit this one out. I see that we're a few more comments coming through, but Jason, I suppose we will give a hard start to this now for Michael, who's going to be doing the edit. So welcome back into part 2 of our week 16 podcast. Jason, I think this is your last podcast before Christmas.
Oh, yeah. I kind of didn't really think about that. Yeah, I'll be back 29th, I think I'm doing it. And you have that week off, don't you? So it's going to be you and Dara next week, and myself and Connell maybe the week after with Michael.
Yeah, I think Michael is the sturdy. He's always there. We were glad he had to drop off for this podcast, but he almost deserves the break, even though it's not a break that he gets at all. Jason, I just mentioned sport as we were transitioning on the live show. I was just mentioning sport there. Are you more of a sports person over the Christmas break, or are you more about getting into your movies?
In terms of Christmas Day itself, I will say, like, as big an NFL fan as I am, I do make an effort to not sit down because there's just so much sport on these days, and the NFL is trying to take over every day of the week at this stage. So I try to pick my moments, I would say. Myself and Becky actually watched like every Christmas movie like a year or 2 years ago. So I'm kind of gone off the movies right now. I just need to take a break and loop back in. But I always enjoy RT movies, BBC movies. I think I'll be checking them out on Christmas Day.
Yeah, dead right. I'd be the exact same, to be fair. Yeah, the sport's taking over. We're actually going to hit one of the games here in a second. I don't want to tease it. Well, I guess it's going to be, we're going to talk about it in 2 seconds. It's going to be the Packers and the Bears game. We did have at our disposal, and the reason I bring it up is because that's actually a Saturday game, as the NFL does, like you say, start to take over every moment of your waking life. Those Saturday games are kicking in. There's 2 of them, and one of them is going to be the Bears-Packers game. We'll talk about it in a second. We did have Dara at our disposal for this podcast that we're on right now, Jason, and I kind of texted him back and be like, look, I'm probably going to lay into the Packers, so I don't want you to be here. I said I didn't think I'd be welcome when I put up this tweet. If you're able to read it, there was a quote tweet. What sports moment has been under talked about, and Dara, being the absolute encyclopedia that he is, was able to bring up a 2021 Cardinals versus Packers game. The Cardinals went in 7-1 or 7-0, and Dara is able to point out, which is just the freak that he is, they're 23-53 ever since. That was the Rizal Douglas game, Jason, when Rizal Douglas had been taken off the Cardinals practice squad, during the week, I think, in the build up to the game. And the Cardinals got absolutely lambasted for having him there in the first place. Like, give us a chance, lads. Like, it just happened to be like that. He was bouncing around from a couple of teams. The Cardinals just got caught.
Oh, I remember that game too well. 7-0. Kyler led a great game-winning drive on that last one. I think it was like a 99-yard drive, and then AJ Green doesn't turn around. Kyler hurts his ankle on the last play, and the season just falls apart. Even not to, rain on any Coles fans' parade right now.
Just to interrupt, Jason, if you're watching the video right now, Dara did think to take the picture of AJ Green not turning it around until too late, and Rizal Douglas picking off. Dara has gotten us at every level. So to once again explain why Dara's not been on the podcast.
I've been actually looking at the Colts and what they're kind of going through right now. It did remind me of that 7-0 season, which just started so promising, and now we're just in this bizarre scenario where Indianapolis mightn't even make the playoffs. So, yeah, look, we've all gone through tough times. That was a particularly tough time for myself, and I'm sure yourself as well, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, it's only been tough there. We have a couple more comments. Joe McCourt, Joe, thanks for obviously joining us on Facebook. Lads, did I miss you talking about the Rams at CX? We're not going to talk about that because it'll be time stamped by the time some people are listening to this on Friday morning. So we're going to avoid talking about that one. Thank you, Sean, for they only talk about the Cardinals on here. Joe, hey, another comment, and I'll lean into the Cardinals thing is of course, if you missed it, I got my Cardinals.
He's talking about this one. He's talking
about the core. Yeah, here we go. Let's go. The two boys were able to get on a podcast together for the first time in weeks, and Michael's not around to stop us from talking about the Cardinals. So we're able to get it in. And wrapping up, I suppose we were talking about some of those games. I don't know. Maybe I have this wrong. I didn't think these were the games. This weekend's Saturday games are the ones that are on Netflix or the ones that are on Christmas Day. Either way, Jerry was pointing out that he doesn't think that the greatest Christmas slate for Netflix. And then Alistair Law was saying he's looking forward to the release of Elway on Netflix next week. I mean, anything that they're putting out, any documentaries on Netflix at the moment are absolute box office. When you're getting Elway, I mean, yeah, give it to me all day long. We are going to, I suppose we're going to wrap back around. I'm going to stay off what's kind of a dirty game, but we had to look at it with the Bucks and Panthers. We'll bury that a bit more into the podcast. The state of games was absolutely insane. I should really be able to pull up some of the games that we had on offer, but I have mentioned that Packers and Bears game, so I might as well go into it. Jason, you're going to look back at the Broncos and Jags. I know Alistair is a Broncos fan and he's watching live, so good for you having to explain that one to him. I hope you're decent to the Broncos. But of course, first of all, with the Bears and Packers, I have to start with the biggest narrative of all, and it's not the big obvious one, but instead it's something that we talked about recently. Ben Johnson versus Matt LaFleur. The comment about enjoying beating LaFleur twice a year was made in the depths of the off season, and now Ben Johnson is looking at going 0-2 against him after losing to the Packers in week 14. I mean, that to me is box office. That was going to be my headache this week. I actually had this written down as my headache like weeks ago, but I left it or whatever, and I brought it up here instead. But this is, to be serious, the first time we're going to see the Packers defense without Micah Parsons. Is there, Jason, a more devastating injury that could happen to a non-quarterback?
It's a tough one to take. It really is, because he is just such a difference maker. And when they brought him in week 2, 3, whenever they traded for him, his impact was almost instantly felt on that defense. If there's one bright spot, I would say, I don't know, it's definitely glass half full. But it is the fact that the team went through the whole off season without him. So they will have at least planned on how to run a defense without Micah Parsons. So as reliant as they've become on him over the course of the season, there are still talented players on that defense. Some of them haven't been showing up as much as you'd like to. But over the last couple of seasons, the likes of Rashawn Gary, for example, like he has been pestering opposition quarterbacks. And there was a stage last season in particular where it seemed like the pass rush as a whole was performing very strongly and they could kind of come at you from any direction. So it's just going to, I mean, next man up mentality. Some of those other guys are just going to have to step up now and replace the presence of Micah Parsons, because one person is certainly not going to replace his presence. It's going to have to be a group effort.
Thank you. And as I tried to text Michael, yeah, no, I think it's going to be massive, because funny, Jason, last week we talked about the Green Bay Packers, and I specifically said that right now it's all about opponents focusing on Micah Parsons. That's what you have to do right now, and dedicate 2 or 3 bodies to him. Is it a 2 or 3 man swing that you no longer have to worry about Micah Parsons? Like, he is your pass rush. I think it's just like, considering Dara last week said that it's a Super Bowl caliber defense, the loss of one man has such a ripple effect throughout that team. I just think it's absolutely unfathomable to explain his presence on that defense. I just think it's so hard. So when you look at the already big hole that was left in the run game by Devontae White going down a couple of weeks ago, bear in mind Tucker Kraft, the tight end, went down on offense. The best part of their offense outside of the quarterback, you could argue. It's just almost like each element and each facet of their game is being whittled away. Your run defense has gone poor. You've poor, or your pressure rate has just took a bullet to the chest. The corner group isn't terrifying, I'll say, and throw into that. And I just think that means that all the pressure is now on this offense, an offense that now has no choice, but it can't be conservative, because whether it's the defense wanting to have everything out in front of them or the offense wanting to be a run first offense and throwing so many screens, we've kind of seen them come away from that a little bit, but you just have to go hard on it now and just be like, we have all the talent. We don't have the excuses of saying, oh, like, don't get me wrong. I've just said Tucker Kraft has been injured, but you've so much other talent. I mean, look at Josh Jacobs when he gets a bit hobbled. Emmanuel Wilson has come in, and it's like, oh, what a benefit that is that you have this absolute 1-2 punch at your run game. Jordan Love has been playing really good at quarterback. I just think that Matt LaFleur, it's not playing with house money like I was saying that you get with Myles Garrett. That he's not actually playing for any wins necessarily. Christian Watson looks like he's not going to miss time. He's kind of in and out of practices this week. I just think that now you have to realize, and the lights come on, and just be like, we are so lucky that the likes of Christian Watson and stuff hasn't been injured. We have to light a fire under our offense, because we can't rely on, like I tightened it up by saying, Dara called it a Super Bowl caliber offense. I don't think it's quite that. Now you have to have a Super Bowl caliber. Sorry, I think I've mixed it up. Super Bowl caliber defense is what Dara called it. I think you have to have a Super Bowl caliber offense now, that we know they've all the talent. They have all the talent to be as good as like the Lions last year, the Chiefs the year before, or the Eagles. They have so much talent. It's just Matt LaFleur has to unleash that. And we know the play calling ability. We know the scheming up that he can do. It's just he hasn't wanted to trust the guys. I don't think it has to be an absolute killer blow losing Micah Parsons, as long as the offense steps up, Jason.
It's funny. I was kind of thinking the two big injuries last week obviously were Mahomes and Parsons, both ACL. There's never a good time to tear your ACL, but Patrick Mahomes tears his ACL on the day that the season's over, and he's got 9 months to recover now until the start of 2026. Whereas Parsons is they're just about to go on a run. The whole offense is kind of look like they're kind of finding their groove these last couple of weeks. Defense has been steady all year long, but it's really just a devastating moment more than anything else for it to happen. But look, here's hoping they can adjust. Another kind of interesting game this week.
Just before you come off that, Jason, we just had a lovely Jer Mullins shouting out that he can't handle Gary McGurk. All right, Gary and Jer in our fantasy league. I love that. Jer preempts a text, and then within a minute, Gary is in getting a dig in against last year the Bears missing the final kick of the game when we had a watch party up in Jer Mahon's. The video went so viral that the news desk of NFL Network getting in touch with me saying, can we play this on NFL Network? The only reason they couldn't was because an F-bomb was dropped, but they couldn't pick it up because of the accent, which is, we should have let that play out. And every Irish man and woman in America watching NFL Network is like, why have they just uncensored an F-bomb just there? Green Bay were giving Denver enough to handle, but the Watson injury and PS2 pick turned the game. The Mike injury eased the pressure on the Broncos O-line. Yeah, but the Broncos did look good. You're looking at the Broncos next. That's a nice transition for you, right?
Yeah, Broncos Jags this week in Denver. And I think it's, both of these teams will obviously be delighted with the position they find themselves in mid-December. 5 in a row for the Jaguars, victories, and 11 in a row for Denver. Puts each of them at the top of their respective divisions, which I don't think a whole pile of people would have predicted at the start of the season. Maybe for Denver, there were some people behind Denver, but just to be ahead of the Chiefs and a competitive Chargers team, for the Jags to have somehow overtaken the Colts, and Texans are roaring back there as well. So they're both in very strong positions, but they do have their divisional opponents nipping at their heels. So this will be a big game for both teams. And I think they'll both be feeling confident going into it. Certainly a quarterback. These two guys have been feeling it these last few weeks. Trevor Lawrence put up 48 points in week 15. It was against the Jets. I feel like that's just a caveat that needs to be said, but 5 passing touchdowns there. And Bo Nix, bigger game against Green Bay. He maybe had the best game of his career, to be honest, looking back on it. 4 touchdowns, but really it's just about how high the stakes were against the Packers and how much that game meant for the AFC first seed race. And to see Nix play the way he did, make some of the throws that he did, it was a pleasure to watch. And the offense hasn't always been firing this year. They have had some slow spells, and the defense has kind of bailed them out. But ultimately, when it matters the most, Nick stepped up and he had a great game against the Packers. And that's 6 game-winning drives now by Bo Nix on the year. As many of those one-score games that have come against the Chiefs, they're going the Broncos' way right now, and a large part of that is down to his composure, his clutch way of running an offense. And I think credits to go for Sean Payton for that. He's just developed this guy so quickly. He looks wise beyond his years at times in terms of how calm he is and his overall demeanor. In terms of who I'd give the edge to this weekend and how the game might play out, well, we've got 2 of the league's top defenses in terms of stopping the run. Fewest yards per game against the Jags, second fewest against the Broncos. Couple that with a pair of middling rushing attacks. Probably give the nod to Denver in terms of rushing offense. But I do fancy both defenses to slow each running back. And I think this is probably going to come down to who can have more success through the air this week. Jags have their positives. Last week was a big game, but I think Jacoby Myers has been a nice addition for them. 3 touchdowns in the last 4 games. Brian Thomas Jr. has kind of, the season hasn't gone as well as he'd like, but since coming back from injury a few weeks ago, he's been relatively productive. But it's just when I look at the quality of that Broncos defense, the pass rush, quality of the secondary, I think both teams will shut down the opposition rushing attack. But when I look at the passing offenses against the opposition defenses, I just struggle to see a scenario where the Jags have as much success against that Denver secondary and pass rush as the Broncos will have against the Jags secondary. I really think this home field advantage, I'm leaning towards Denver here. Do you have any thoughts on this game, Mark?
Yeah, it's funny. I just actually was on my phone there looking up what the spread is. 3 points. It's just kind of crazy. This is the number 1 versus the number 3 in the AFC. Like this time last year, the number 1 versus the 3 must have been the Chiefs versus the Bills. I think that is the Broncos versus the Jags. It's like, what world are we living in? Especially like the Jaguars look absolutely useless in London. I can't believe, like when I've had to double check it a couple of times. I think you're right to point out Jacoby Myers. He's been a great addition for the team. I did point out last week that the week before he had 4 catches on 10 targets, but the 10 targets are important. I don't have last week's stats. I know he was an improved player, but the targets definitely allow more space because the defense has to focus on him. And Brian Thomas Jr. can certainly get in, open up a bit more space to him and go to work. They don't have Travis Hunter. Would have been cool to have him, but they don't have him, just like players don't, or other teams don't have other players. So yeah, I think it's super interesting. I think I lean on the Broncos still. I know when the Jags are poor, they're poor, but I suppose Trevor Lawrence right now has just become first overall pick Trevor Lawrence. So I think it's really cool place because again, number 1 versus number 3, we could see this in the playoffs so soon. And it's like, how excited will we be then for this matchup? Because right now I think it's a cool matchup, but it's not the same as Chiefs versus Bills would have been last year. But that's where I said last week as well, when we were talking about the Jags, you make your names in the playoffs. and those are coming up so quickly. Two more teams that we are going to talk about that will also be in the playoffs as I finally get on top of this and actually put my graphics up on time. Does anyone want to win the NFC South game? The Bucks versus the Panthers face off for the first time this year. They're going to face off again in week 18. So we don't know what significance this game really has. I think basically these teams both have to win 2 games. Whoever wins 2 games, it means that they've 2 of their next 3 games. It means that they are the ones that are going to be going through. I mistakenly saw that the Falcons were 2 games back from them, thinking that they weren't eliminated, but they were, whatever. Because they face off against one another, it means that they have to it means that the Falcons have to be eliminated. Jason, I do not know. I'm after throwing up a comment there. I might come back to that one because I actually don't know what it's about. But I don't really know where you want to start with this game. Is there anything that really excites you?
That comment looks like it was talking about the home field advantage to the Broncos, which is a good. I think it's a very valid point. Jacksonville climate is a lot different to Colorado this time of year, I'm sure. So, just the fans, but also the actual climate, I think could have an impact. And that's part of why I'm going to pick the Broncos. But huge game. I think it's fair point to say that last game would be a nice to have victory, and it would be meaningful. But this is kind of 2 teams fighting for their survival right now. If they both win 2 games over the next few weeks, the Bucks, I think, have the tiebreak on the Panthers.
But it'll be figured out now because they both face off against. So I guess if they split them, then the Bucks hold the tiebreak. That's how it works.
Yeah, so they're playing each other now, and they're playing in the final week. And in between, the Bucks have the Dolphins and the Panthers have the Seahawks. So I think essentially I'm looking at this as a must-win for the Panthers because you've got to kind of assume that the Seahawks are going to show up next week. Panthers have got to beat the Bucks this week, and likely it's going to come down to week 18. If the Bucks win this week and they beat the Dolphins next week, then it's game over. Panthers don't have a shot in the final week of the season. So that's kind of what's at stake here. Panthers, as far as I see it, Panthers are fighting for their playoff hopes.
So the Bucks have a week 18 bye on the line essentially here, because if they were to win, well, I suppose next week's game is but then they're like, well, we can't get beaten in the division. We're locked into the number 4 seed. We can take off all of a sudden. Like, why do they deserve to be able to rest players for a week? That is absolutely insane. Like, oh man, what?
It's it's a strange.
Jason, sorry, that is actually such a thing. Like, if your division sucks really hard, you can get the 4 seed and still get a bye that week. Like, they're after the NFC South, as poor as it is, has found a glitch in the NFL's way of doing things.
That's a great point. Yeah. I haven't looked at it that way before. Look, you're right to call this, I think, an ugly match. As meaningful as it is, both of these teams are just on kind of strange runs right now. The Buccaneers have completely derailed the second half of the season. They've lost 5 of their last 6 games. That only victory was against Arizona. So it's just been very poor. But the Panthers as well, I think Panthers might be the most inconsistent team in the league. It seems like one week they're beating the Packers, next week they're losing to the Saints, and they're beating the Rams, and they're losing the next. It seems like they're flipping every week. And if you're gonna be taken as a serious team, you're going to have to beat the likes of the Saints. They've lost them twice now over these last few weeks. Which is, look, I shouldn't say that. I mean, Charlie Smith, come on, of course they lost to the Saints. But it's just a tough team to kind of put a handle on right now. I think the offense, I think you talked about it a few weeks ago, Mark, but it's quite a simple offense. When the run game goes, things run smoothly, as with most offenses in the NFL. But it really has been a case of Bryce Young putting up some solid performances when the team around him has given him the time to do that. And he's had some big performances throughout the year. He's 4 games with 3 touchdowns. Lot of dips in between that, but when things are right around him, he is capable of winning some of these close games. I think in terms of the run game as well, Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle, they've kind of had this nice symbiotic thing going on throughout the season, where I've looked at some of their stats, and essentially when Hubbard is shut down, in terms of like yards per carry, Dowdle seems to have a big game. When Dowdle is slowed down, Hubbard seems to have a big game. So it's like the other fellas picking up the slack more often than not. And then you have the occasions where they're both shut down, and then the whole offense just derails, and Bryce Young throws interceptions, and it just becomes a bit of a mess. It's top 10 rushing attack overall on the year in the league. So they shouldn't be just completely overlooked. This Panthers team has been capable of some strong performances, and you might say they're catching some big teams off guard, like the Rams a couple of weeks ago. But they are playing some fundamentally sound football at times. And I think a big part of their success in some of those games as well has been some key decision making from Canales within the game. They've been very aggressive on fourth down and picking the right moments to do that. And crucially, they've converted those fourth downs most recently against the Rams. So I think when I look at the Bucs and what they have going on, they've got that receiving core back fully healthy now. I think Bryce Young is going to have to put up one of his big games to keep pace with the offense on the other side. So can they convert those crucial fourth downs, because those moments are going to happen in the game? And also, can McMillan get going as well? That rookie wide receiver, he had some fantastic games early on in the season, but hasn't done much these last few weeks. So they need to get him involved, need a steady rushing attack, and just make life as easy as possible for Bryce Young, because he's capable when the offense around him runs smoothly.
Yeah, like I suppose looking at the other side of the ball, this is a Bucs team that just dropped a 14-point lead to the Falcons last week, like choking to Kirk Cousins. And it kind of makes me think about, Todd Bowles winning the division has kept him in a job before, but every single year it's the same script. Take a lead in the NFC South and then hobble to the finish line, and you're pretty much only out surviving everyone else in the division. Winning the NFC South should be an absolute bare minimum for this team. It's like his job is clearly under threat if they're not able to get it done. But like, he is a defensive-minded guy. You just have to, like, I think the thing with the Bucs for me is they've just held on for so long to, like, even that Super Bowl year that they had, obviously in 2020, it was a homegrown roster, and I suppose they have been great. Like, their GM Jason Licht has been amazing, obviously, for them. But like, I just think that it's kind of hit a wall there. Like, Levante David, Father Time absolutely has caught up with him. They gave Hassan Reddick a contract this year. I think it was a $14 million a year, which is a hefty enough price to be paying. He's a sack and a half on the year. Their pass rush is so poor that Jason Pierre-Paul, that has not played in the NFL for 2 years. His last sack was on New Year's Day 2023 as part of the 2022 season. He's just been brought from the practice squad, and it looks like he's going to be playing this weekend. Like, what are we doing? Like, Todd Bowles is supposed, and I think that it's Todd Bowles' stubbornness, because he won't come away from this soft zone that he just insists on playing. And that's why Kyle Pitts has a monster day last week. Kyle Pitts' 2 biggest games of his career has both times been against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a division opponent. So when you look forward to Bryce Young coming to town, this team gives up I think it's the 3rd most yards in the NFL passing. Like, that's a recipe for disaster. When it's like, when Bryce Young, like you're exactly saying, Jason, it's like they obviously, everything's predicated off their run game. But when Bryce Young can pass the ball around, he can pass the ball around. So it's like, I just think it's a recipe for disaster. And it's like, is it finally going to be, I suppose, the straw that breaks the camel's back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, for the Todd Bowles version of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Because they look like they're obviously running away with it. Whatever juice the offense, and that's why Todd Bowles got great credit at the beginning of the year for being able to patch over those cracks that they had, whether it was like Aaron Glenn or Ben Johnson with the Lions last year, that the offense kept going. And you were saying there, like, hey, they're able to get some great stuff from Emeka Ibuka and stuff earlier on in the year, but it's just as they've slightly gotten a bit healthier, you're hoping that like Mike Evans coming back and everything makes a bit of a difference. You're hoping that Bucky Irving is able to have some kind of form, but I just don't see it happening. It's just we've seen the script so many times that they just trot along and then they sneak into the playoffs. But I suppose, yeah, give me the Panthers in this game, because although I've seen the highs that the Bucks have had, it needs to come with a level of consistency. Whereas it's just so sporadic when the Panthers switch it on, they look insane. This is going back now 2 years. You never know when the Panthers are going to have that big game. But I just think the way that the defense sets up for them this year, that Bryce Young will be able to pass the ball around again, opens up the run game for them. So I kind of lean on the Panthers again, but that's cost me because then the Panthers don't show up when you expect them to show, because I'm saying that I am. The Bucks are 2.5 point favorite in this game. This game is in Carolina, if I'm correct. I have it written down as in Carolina. Who do you have in this game?
Yeah, well, you kind of mentioned expectations there. When the Panthers are expected to do well, they don't deliver. The line on this one, when I last checked, was Buccaneers as 3-point favorites. And if you kind of want to look at trends there, as favorites, the Panthers have lost their last 12 games straight, and their last 7 victories have all come as underdogs. So if you're a Panthers fan, you'll be relieved to see them listed as the underdogs right now. They have that home field advantage. I'm going with the Buccaneers. I think the Buccaneers will win this one.
Jason, he just defeated on point.
Exactly. All streaks. When I see a streak like that, I'm like,
it's due
to end.
Interception. When you see them tipping over when someone's due an interception, I'm like, no. When you're due an interception, you are due an interception, because the interception is like 270 passes without getting one. It's like you are literally doing. We got a comment there from Joe McCourt, who's also pointed out that 50-point games, 50 points you'd expect in this game. I suppose that I like to think, and he says the average that the Panthers have given up is 24 points. I like that thinking because we have poor defenses, but like when the offenses are poor, they're miserable. But then it's like, if you take the start of the Bucks game there last week, they did put up points, but then they obviously just again absolutely fell apart against Kirk Cousins. Yeah, like I hope that it actually is a good game, because we need the NFC South. I would like to see the NFC South actually earn a place in the playoffs. But if this is just an absolute stinker of a game, it just leads to more and more frustration from my part. Because another point, and we'll move on to headache now, Jason, I think something that I've kind of been thinking about recently is, as a Cardinals fan, is that it's like the Cardinals fans want the owner Michael Bidwell to sell, and the truth that I see in that is that him being a bit cheap sometimes means that more away fans are in the stadium, or he doesn't pay big contracts, yada yada. Cardinals fans want that. Me as a Cardinals fan, I want them to leave the NFC West. I want a complete new alignment, because it is so insane to see that the NFC West is like these teams that have 9 combined losses or something like that. It is when you stack up the Rams, the Seahawks, and 49ers. I cannot think of their record off the top of my head, but they're absolutely just like stacking wins. It's so frustrating that you have to be looking across the NFC South and you're like, these teams do not want to win. But one thing I've looked at for my headache this week, Jason, is kind of the headache of what is happening with the draft board. Because of that parity we've been talking about all year, it means that like no one has run away to a 16 win record going into this week, or 15 wins on the trot or something like that. But that is great for the playoff race because it's kept it so exciting. But I think then on the other side of the draft board, it's actually leading to this. And again, I kind of did stumble across this as a Cardinals fan, but it's leading to us to a place where there's 3 teams at 2 wins and 3 teams at 3 wins. And there is not a crazy scenario, because the Titans and Jets both play the Saints, and the Raiders and Giants both play one another, that we could have three team. Well, basically that would mean one team would have the first overall pick, but there could be a 5-way tie for the second pick, and it's kind of annoying to me as a Cardinals fan because like if the Cardinals lose a game and the strength of schedule is the tiebreak, they go way back in the draft order. But like if you're the Raiders right now and your strength of schedule has been poor, you can win a game and not move at all. And I was thinking, is it not so perfect for the NFL to do some kind of seeding? Sorry, not seeding, a draft lottery for the draft. Like, so is that right? A lottery for the draft.
Like
Take
NBA.
it exactly like NBA style, and it's like this is not, this is just original thought, I suppose. The headache is as a fan looking at your draft position. Like I'm on Tankathon now every Sunday or whatever, being like, well, what does it mean or whatever. But I do think that when we see the value of first round picks, and especially the second, the third, the fourth overall pick, when you see that there's such congestion at the top of that board right now, I think that it is going to be a bit of an issue that you could just do it that, yeah, for ties like this situation, that it is going to be a lottery. I'd imagine the NFL would probably do any tie breaks are going to have a lottery. And that sets up January so well. Do you do it the week after the Super Bowl? Probably not, because the new head coaches want to go to teams that they know have high draft capital or whatever. But I see something like that, and it also stops any element of tanking and stuff like that. But I do think, Jason, maybe it's a once off because there's been such parity. But how do you feel about the Cardinals only having 3 wins, which would normally be good enough to get you maybe the first overall pick, and they're sitting there at number 6?
Yeah, I mean, this is like for the Cardinals fans who went through the well, maybe there's some out there who went through like the early 2000s, but then we had this spell in the kind of 2010s where the team was always bad, but never quite bad enough to get those very high draft picks. So yeah, it's frustrating, but yeah, parity might be a friendly way to describe it, because there is a lot of bad teams out there, and to have 6 or 7 in the mix for a number 1 draft pick this late in the season, I think it does reflect the fact that there is a lot of bad football being played, a lot of parity in the middle area, even up the top. The best teams aren't as dominant as maybe they have been in the past, which is a good thing, I think. But yeah, in terms of the draft, the number 1 pick race, a lot to look out for over these next couple of weeks. Looking forward to it. Just for my headache, kind of sticking on. Yeah, we've definitely talked a lot of Cardinals now. When
stay away.
when the cat's away. Bijan Robinson. If the Falcons are playing Arizona this week, and that Cardinals defense has been a bit of a mess for stopping opposition running backs in recent weeks. I think Bijan Robinson is going to have a big game. He's had some massive games this season, and I could see him going for 150 up to 200 scrimmage yards in this one against Arizona. So yeah, short and sweet. That's my headache.
Yeah, good stuff. Short and sweet. We were saying, when Michael's away, we might end up doing a shorter podcast, but sure enough, it goes to an hour and 20 minutes. Probably missed the end of the night ourselves anyway. We got a cool comment in there. Alistair says, great show as always. Happy Christmas to you and yours. And obviously right back at you, Jason. It is. We're wrapping up your last one before Christmas. I will hopefully be back next week. I was saying last week, I do have an emergency with a tooth over here that I might end up having to go to the dentist. So we'll see if I'm around next week, or else I might be bumped onto having to skip my night out in the middle of the Christmas period to join you. But until then, yeah, I mean, it's just such an exciting year. By the time we come back and the 3 of us, you, me, and Michael, are doing it again, it's like we're talking about Broncos being the number 1 seed, Jaguars being number 3. I don't know of a season that is as exciting right now in terms of there's complete change atop, whether that's the draft board that we're talking there a second ago or the playoffs. I just think it's exceptionally exciting. It's like, this is it now. We are into absolute crucial time. We've seen Chiefs knocked out. We've seen Bengals knocked out. We see Bengals are being linked, Joe Burrow, to the Cardinals, to give them one last mention. Jason thought that was the wildest storyline. But now obviously appreciate having you around for this year. Will be 2026 until we're back again, as more and more people are getting in the lads. Merry Xmas and enjoy the weekend. Cracker game. They are cracker games. Anything to say, Jason?
Yeah, happy Christmas, Mark, and yeah, I won't be talking to you next week, but enjoy it. And
Well, you enjoy. We actually, if I scroll way back up here, I left it until the very end. We did get one saying, "Well, lads, I see a fantasy football semi-finalist
oh,
there. Congrats to you, Jason. Hopefully, I'm paying you out a boatload of money now soon because you are. How do you think are you feeling good about your fantasy team? That'll be wrapped up next podcast and all."
team's looking good. Team's looking good. We're feeling good. Yeah, vibes are good in the locker room. It's been a good season, so let's take it home.
Good stuff. All right. Cheers, everyone listening live. Cheers, anyone for listening in on the podcast or however you do it. And yeah, if we don't catch you before Christmas, have a good one. If we don't catch you before the New Year, many happy returns, whatever you're supposed to say. That Jason, thanks for joining me tonight. Sorry that Michael wasn't here, and we will catch you when we catch you next. Thanks for thank you for listening in.